We have some fights this weekend, and Goes and I will be hosting a watch along on Saturday night for UFC 312. Quick note on this particular watch along, we will be starting at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. So we won't be there for the prelims unless we have a chance maybe to get there a little bit early, but we're going to schedule to just be with you for the 5 fights of the pay-per-view. So now we've been doing this for a while now, and there's a pattern, and that's why I'm giving you guys as much heads up notice as we can. And we have 2 title fights. It's very top heavy, not gonna lie. But let's cover it, right? We got Dricus Du Plessis versus Sean Strickland. You feeling the buzz? Danny Segura, tell me that. Tell me how you grade this going in on paper. We haven't seen the fights yet, right? And what's your early prediction? I got to get 3 things out of you here because we're running a little bit behind.
Not feeling the buzz at all. And I'll give this pay-per-view a 7 out of 10. I think it's fairly poor. I think there's a lot in the main and co-main event, but beyond that, it's looks pretty slim. And you asked for my early prediction?
Yes.
For what? Both or one?
For the main event.
Okay, and for the main event, I'm going to go with Dricus Du Plessis. I think he's just proven to be sort of the better fighter over the span of the last couple of years, beating Whitaker, beating Adesanya, beating Strickland. He's a very good guy. He's a very, very skilled guy. I think Strickland can give him a tough fight, but I'm going with the champion again.
Okay. How about you guys? All 3 questions, if you don't mind, please. We're doing a little bit of catch up here. Are you feeling the buzz? What kind of a grade would you get? And who's your early lean?
Well, it's super top heavy, right? So grade going in, I'll give it a B just because the top 2 fights are fights that I do want to see. As far as buzz goes, yeah, I actually do still feel a buzz. And I feel the reason I feel that is because I thought Sean and DDP did a good job of just never letting the buzz go away from the first fight, right? They kind of came at each other and stayed relevant with that talk. And as far as the fight itself, how it will play out, when you play Mike Tyson's Punch Out or Super Mario Brothers, the first time you play it, you might die 2 minutes in, right? But the next time it's 3 and then 4. You get better as it goes, right? This fight that they had the first time reminds me a lot of that because I felt like Sean Strickland was doing great. But then as the fight went on, DDP came back. And I think the reason he came back was because he just figured Sean Strickland out. Those video games are the same. No matter how many times you pop them in, the bad guys are going to come out at the same point every single time. Sean was doing the same thing over and over and expected different results. DDP just figured him out. So unless Sean makes some adjustments for this fight, I think it's probably going to end up going the same way. And I hope Sean does make adjustments because he's a great fighter and he doesn't always show all of his tricks. I think he needs to do that to get the victory here.
All right, let's go to Dan. Tom, Dan, are you feeling the buzz? What kind of a grade would you give it? And who's your early lean?
No buzz, and I even heard like an Australian cat get offered free tickets, and he wasn't even that excited to take it. Like that's how bad this card is. I would say it's a D. I would give it a D, but grading it on the scale of like what the UFC has been giving us since the pandemic, it's probably a C. But to grade on a curve there. As far as the fight goes, of course, check out my in-depth breakdown MMAJunkie.com. But I will say adjustments are a key factor, and you guys kind of already touched on that. Of course, Sean Strickland has the great Eric Mixon in his corner. I'm going to be biased there. But, say what you will about DDP and Mornay LaVisser. I know Mornay LaVisser tends to treat DDP like a cheap prom date in the corner there, the way he fondles and kisses him all the time. But the fact is, those guys can prepare, okay? And they had a really good game plan against Adesanya. They were attacking him on the stance switches. So I think this is almost going to be a battle of the corners and which fighter can take those video game directions the best.
I like those references. Good stuff there. I'm going to be harsh too, man. On paper, it's top heavy and I'm excited for those fights, but I'm looking at the whole card. Oh man, I like D and maybe D plus C minus, like right in that area. And as far as like if I went 1 through 10, I'd almost say like a 5.5, maybe a 6 or something like that. Now remember, I can come back on Monday and go, that was one hell of an event, because obviously if the matchups are well done, then great. Especially if the title fights are classics, right? But on paper going in, that's just kind of how I feel there. Tatiana Suarez finally is getting her title shot, fellas. And, she's had to overcome injury. She's a cancer survivor. Lots of different spells of non-activity, right? She's going up against one of the all-time greats in Zhang Weili. What are your thoughts here, Danny, on this one? Will Tatiana Suarez rise to the occasion? Does she have a shot against Zhang Weili? And who's your early lean?
100% she has a shot, and I'm picking her to be champion. I think she's going to be Zhang Weili, and I've always said this. I think she's been the best in the division for a really long time, but unfortunately her body just has been her worst enemy and hasn't really helped her get to the places that she needs to get. But she finally gets her title shot. She finally gets to prove that. I'm just hoping that she is healthy. I did interview her ahead of this fight, which the interview posted on MMA Junkie last week, yeah, she says she's the healthiest she's ever been. Obviously, these are the type of things a lot of fighters say pre-fight, so keep that in mind. But I really do believe a healthy Tatiana Suarez beats anyone at 115 pounds, including Zhang Weili. So, yeah, I mean, I'm going to go with her, and I'm so happy this fight is finally here because we've been talking about her for so long as far as, like, you know, title contention. She was linked to Joanna Jędrzejczyk. She was linked to Rose Namajunas. And now she's linked to Zhang Weili. It's almost as she's like been a top contender through all the eras. Is it a little too late? We'll find out, but I feel confident that she will be champion.
Quay Stefan in the chat says, is it true that nobody wants to go to Australia to fight because of a certain tax that Australia dumps on both of those in the fight? Interesting. I know that overseas, certain countries can really take a bite out of you. Anshul Jubilee's gas station says, if it weren't for the title fights, this card would be in the Apex. Joseph Boza says, about time American Habib gets hurt shot. She wins by finish in round 3. Goes. Do you agree with Joseph Boza? Tatiana Suarez is going to get her hand raised, or do you think the champ holds court?
First of all, I agree with the gas station guy. I think take those 2 fights away, it doesn't happen in the Apex. Probably happens in the parking lot of the Apex. But I do agree. Yeah, I think I've been big on Tatiana Suarez, man. I think she's always been game for these fights. She's always had the want. It's just like Danny said, you know, the body hasn't always responded. But now it's firing on all cylinders, and I think it's a great fight. I think she gets it done too. And I'm curious to see what you two guys are going to say. We're all going to be on board here. Or are we going against Tatiana at some point?
Dan Tom, what you got to say?
This is tough. This is tough for me because I love me some underdogs, and 2 underdogs are 2 challengers are coming from my backyard, my gym, Extreme Couture, and I've seen Tatiana Suarez, getting the work in, which is always a good sign. Just seeing them in the gym for fighters that struggle with their health, and Sean's always game to do his thing, so it's going to be tough. Really going to have to tamper down my bias. But she did open as an underdog, plus 172 guys, and the money has been steadily pouring in on her, especially the last week has almost flipped the line now. She's a slight favorite. It's pretty much going to settle at pick'em odds, but it shows you that you guys aren't alone as far as the faith in the American Khabib. I like that.
Danny, what about strawweight division? Can this revive it a little bit since the loss of Joanna Jędrzejczyk to retirement, Rose to flyweight, Carla Esparza to motherhood?
Yeah, this at some point was the best division in women's MMA. And I think in general, it was just like you could just pick any strawweights and you were going to get a banger fight. That's not the case anymore. It's really lost a lot of its steam. And I feel like it's moved up to 125. But I'm hoping that that Tatiana Suarez, if she does become champion, she can spice things up. Look, I don't want to shit on Zhang Weili. She looks like a lovely person and she's one hell of a fighter, but she just feels so disconnected to this side of the world. There's the language barrier, and also she's not very active. She fights about like once a year, and then in between fights, I just feel like she kind of gets lost. I don't know. I would like to see her a little bit more involved in the division, a little bit more active if she does remain champion, because this division has so much talent, so much potential to be a lot more than what it is. And due to the reasons that I mentioned, lack of title defenses and just being a little bit out of the UFC loop, it just feels like the division kind of just falls flat. And it's a bummer because there's a lot of good fighters out here. So hopefully it picks up.
Danny, I agree with everything you said, but I will say when she does light up, she somehow still can get control of the room. She'll learn a couple token English phrases. She'll connect.
That's once a year.
That's what hurts her. Was like Poetan knows 0 English, but he's fighting, right?
And he's at every event. He's doing. Look, he gave me an interview at Karate Combat, like, and the dude, it looked tired, but he's still out there doing media. Like, I don't know.
And he's cornering Strickland a month before he's got to fight.
Yeah.
Ankalaev, crazy. Real quick before we get out of here, goes another highlight from this weekend's event. Quick.
The man of steel, man, Cody Steele. It's fighting a guy with one name, Rongzu. Steele's undefeated. Finished his last 4 fights. I mean, who's reffing this? James Gunn? Take my money. I'm in.
All right, how about you, Dan Tom? Who do you like from this undercard or some of the fights on the main card?
You know, we're talking about the undercard under the main card being bad, but really, the undercard's better than the main card, minus the title fights. They're force feeding us freaking 205 and low level heavyweights on there when we've got fights like Tom Nolan versus Vyacheslav Borisov, amongst other 155 and 145 fights just littered on that undercard that might not have the name value, but for matchups, they will be way more exciting than what the matchmakers are force feeding us on the main card.
All right, and Danny Segura, who you got on the way out here?
Ghost, who'd you highlight? Sorry,
Cody Steele and Rongzu.
I'm gonna switch things up here. This is flying super under the radar, but Alexandre Topuria, Ilia Topuria's older brother, is making his UFC debut here. He's only like 5-1, but he fights exactly like his brother. He's got that little boxing stance where he comes in and out, that little hop. The dude's really good. He's always been known to be a guy that in the gym, he excels. He's been very inactive as far as like professional fights goes. He's finally in the big leagues. Let's see what he could do. It just seems like from the people that I've talked to close to that camp, Ilia Topuria is a little bit better managing sort of the lights and all that and the fame a little better than Alexandre. But Alexandre, technically speaking, some say he's even better than his brother. So let's see what happens. Let's see what happens this Saturday. Very intrigued by his debut.
All right, good stuff. I'm going to keep an eye on the Kong and Brazil fight.